Hey everybody, welcome to Subscription Insiders webinar, Fixing Operational Gaps That Undermine Subscription Profitability. For anybody that's in the business, we all know that devil is in the details, and those details are what can make or break your profitability. Today, I am here with Terry Rowinski, who is the president of CDS Global. He's here because he has a depth of experience with subscription operations, and he's put together a really informative session today to help all of us really understand where to look in our subscription operations and what to think about as we start examining those areas on how to improve those gaps and issues that might be impacting your profitability. So, Terry, welcome so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really do appreciate being here today.
Absolutely. A couple of tactical things. Number one, we'll be using the chat to communicate with everybody today. We have some questions. If you have questions of us, put them in the chat. We're reading them. We've got a team behind the scenes that can respond to any questions that you might have. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, this will be available on demand. And yes, we have a PDF follow-up, which is for everybody who's registered that we will be sending after the webinar, which will be your profitability audit that the CDS Global team has put together for us. So I've seen that. It's really good. So I'm excited to get that to all of you. Terry, why don't you take it away and let's get started.
Sure. So thank you. And thank you again for having me. And for those that can join us in New York, I'd be really excited to meet you in person. While I love activities like this, I still love the in-person, way of us just getting together and talking and sharing stories, even better. I have the privilege of really representing, our entire team here at CDS Global today. And our company is really the experts at what we're talking about today. I just happen to be a person that has the joy of having the megaphone and having been prepped by some amazing folks within my own organization for today and Kathy. So let's make this interactive as you all want. Use chat and things as Kathy had said, and we will go. From who we are and what we are as an organization, we were founded almost 54 years ago now out of a publication that was called Look Magazine. And some of you that are on today may actually even know what Look was. And as Look shut down in Iowa, which is where it was headquartered and operationalized out of, a group of 30 brothers and sisters stayed back and basically said, if we could do what we did for Look Magazine way back then, why can't we do it for others and create a company that effectively can bring business services to publishers in the media space, the newspaper space, and other avenues back then? And we have a legacy that's brought us all the way until today, which is a pretty amazing and special moment to be a part of, especially as me as being the leader of the company overall and the leader globally for our folks that are also in the UK. So as we go through this, we have the opportunity to share some of the best practices and learnings that we have from these 54 years. And ultimately, I just want to leave you with probably one statement, and it actually came to me in, of all things, a bag lunch that I received at one of our operational sites. The vendor has a little thing that they do where they put a little trinket, a little toy in the bag, and they also put a saying in the bag. And mine was, good is not good enough. And that is what I ended up, getting in my bag last week while I was around our state here in Iowa. And it really talks about the space that we're in. We end up helping our clients who are brand names, as you see here. We also help many non-for-profit organizations as well work in the subscription billing, revenue, maintenance, leakage, other avenues of effectively how to ensure that we are helping our clients meet them where their customers are at and create and maintain relationships. So we have a bunch of things to cover today, and Kathy, I'll let you kind of help me work our way through the day in terms of things that you see and people want to know about and stuff.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. So here's a question for everybody, and please put this into the chat. Where do you see most profit lead. Real curious what anybody thinks this, and you may not see any profit leakage, but I'm just curious if you see that where it might be your payments, your fulfillment, and just put that into the chat so we can see that. And I'll be looking for that. And why don't you keep going? 'Cause we've got a lot of information to get through, Terry.
Sure, sure. So why is this even being t spoken about? It goes back to that good isn't good enough. Right now, as we work across all of our clients that we're blessed to partner with, it's become more and more prevalent and understood at really all levels of the organization, that subscription organizations and donor-based organizations are just under this incredible pressure right now from just about every direction that they turn. Acquisition costs are incredibly high. Clients that are working with us tell us at times they don't even become profitable with a customer until a relationship gets created and they're in their second year of a relationship with them, a renewal, for lack of better. So that puts even more emphasis for us all in terms of removing the disruptions in our processes and our operations in year one from day zero of meeting a potential customer all the way through what happens as a part of the journey. And the renewal part, you're getting subscribers intelligently moved from an initial offer to at times a higher priced product or a higher priced subscription. Is making things very interesting as well, especially given the world that we're living in today, where inflation and everything else is running at the levels it's at. Um, all of us, our customers, our expectations have increased dramatically over time. I certainly think of things differently, frankly, even just in the past probably 6 to 10 months, given the evolution of AI and its proliferation into customer service and other things. So our expectations are increasing, and the leadership teams of all of our organizations are being focusing on how do you deliver the best product really at the lowest price to protect margins and make revenue performance, growing and more predictable. And what we've seen here at our firm is that profitability and the brand promise itself rarely breaks in one specific obvious place or one specific obvious moment. As we see it and as we kind of coin it, it quietly, through operational gaps and inefficiencies, erodes during the entire subscription life cycle. We can grab a customer with a strong offer. Sometimes it's no offer, it's a zero. Join us and try something, and then we try and convert a customer. But if the logic starts and is off from the beginning, from acquisition into billing, the payment experience is inconsistent, then the service teams that we have are absorbing what could be preventable issues, or fulfillment doesn't match a promise of what we're doing. The economics and the satisfaction of that subscriber really start to change. The main point is that profitability isn't just a growth issue or a retention issue. It's rooted in the operational experience and the operational execution and any issues that par out of that. And we believe through good data and through good business processes and practices, organizations can and should be seeing those gaps earlier and helping themselves cut those types of issues off and be in a much, much better place to effectively increase more predictable revenue performance.
So what's really interesting, Terry, is some of the direct comments and the comments to everybody. There's a lot of them focused on credit cards. So
Ah,
there's clearly a payment area there. And
sure.
then I see a question about a lack of resources, which is where they feel that they're running into some issues. So just a heads up that that's what we're all feeling right now on this session.
Yeah, and you all are not alone, unfortunately. I wish those would be singular issues within a single company, but they're everywhere, frankly, no matter what. So
Hmm.
so on the reoccurring revenue in terms of what we're doing, at times we talk about this phrase, execution, fragility, and what happens in terms of leaks and things that are taking place. What we really like to coin from an execution fragility perspective is that really we may all have really great sound business strategies, And at times, those change dynamically, sometimes within the day, in terms of what's going on. But as we see, especially as we onboard new clients and we help people come into our ecosystem, is that they're coming because the systems behind what they're doing are fragmented in such a way, either at the data level, at the business process level, at the handoff level, that they just don't execute consistently and then have bad results. So for instance, like I was saying earlier, an initial campaign may perform really well on the front end. We get new orders or we get renewals. It's driven a response. It's what the marketing team and the branding team and the go-to-market team really wants, and it really looks successful on paper. But then that offer starts coming into the organization to be operationalized. It moves into billing and payment processing, like you just mentioned, customer service, fulfillment, and then ultimately, how do you take a client and elevate their experience so that they want to buy more stuff or donate more, and then also do it again and again through a renewal? If those handoffs aren't really aligned within the organization, the organization itself starts to absorb a lot of costs after the sale, and obviously the customer experience and even the brand promise starts to erode. So, offers may create confusion. The billing systems may not actually tie 100% in what's said on a bill, whether it be digital or in today's world, still physical paper, to what the offer was. And then the customer gets that and they're confused. The payment process might not recover failed payments correctly. And we'll talk about that a little bit down the road here. The services team, the customer service organization or account teams may not have systematic ways to correct issues and need to do things manually. Or the fulfillment access and of what we do may experience failures and just fall short in and of itself. And if you look at things, I'm a big theory of constraint guy from an operational perspective. Like, where is the area in the organization that can't handle the stress of like a big ramp up or a ramp down? Or when there's an issue, where do we actually stop, drop, and roll together to get things fixed? In isolation, no one of these things looks like none of them are good. But in
Mm.
isolation, they look like they're manageable and they look like I can get the customer past this. But if you have multiple of these, or if something goes downhill where it starts at the time that the bill happens and it just keeps going south, not only do you create margin leakage because of all your extra costs, but you're also creating confidence leakage within your customer in terms of what's going on. So really from a execution fragility, we can sell like there's lights out, but the operational model really struggles to deliver from a consistency, a cleanliness, and profitability at scale.
So if I'm looking at this, how should my organization look at this revenue map? Is this how we should organize ourselves, or how do you suggest we do that?
Yeah, I think this is one way to effectively create data points, create listening points, and look for signals. We'll talk about signals in a little bit. It's a term we use quite often here at CDS. So look for the signals that are showing some type of stress or duress among what's happening. And that can come from many different means and many different ways. It can come from the customer themselves. It can come from your operational systems. It can come from your third-party partners that are also, giving you feedback. Um, Incredibly, I joined our company a couple years ago. I had done some business in the catalog distribution, area way back when catalogs used to actually be a thing. So I'm a circa 1990s start my career guy. And some of the same issues that we had in the catalog days when the internet came along and the whole great divide started to happen is the same thing happening in media and publications today. The same type of failures are happening that happened in the book industry way back when as well. So we have some things to look for and look at in history so that history doesn't repeat itself. And that's the same thing with in your own organization. Build the data points, build the understanding points of what's happening within your operational flows at all levels across the various either siloed or integrated organizations that exist to make the magic happen. And then have somebody understand that it's their responsibility. It's not just mine as the leader of our organization, it's each and every one of our employees, but let's find those areas where we're falling short on the promise.
That's really helpful. I love the concept of execution fragility. That's
Yeah.
a really great concept. So it's a good way to think about that as well.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So one of the things that we wanted to go over, which I thought would we're hoping to give you some clues as to things to look at, in terms of where like leakage and things could end up happening. So from an operational perspective, the first that we see is really offer to billing, the handoff. This is where, the commercial promise, however you were able to get that customer or that donor or whatever that individual is that you call it within your organization, how you're getting them to effectively start that relationship or restart that relationship with you. That commercial promise, that almost like trust contract that you're making with the individual has to become, known throughout your organization and lead itself in terms of what happens next, which is really, the billing logic. So the types of things that we look at here, that are on the screen are, do you see unusual numbers of contacts or credits or adjustments taking place after the fact? Do you see through the credit card processing or other ways disputes that come up after the fact? Depending on how you survey your customers, are you getting feedback in those surveys that you're actually not just going, oh, yay, I got a voice of the customer survey of X, but you're not paying attention to the comments, that they're giving you. So from our perspective, and what we would continue to suggest as you work across your organizations is really ensure that that connection between, what one part of your organization may be putting out in terms of an offer actually can exercise its way all the way through your ecosystem in terms of what it does, and then ultimately, kind of have those listening points so that you can understand if you're actually meeting people where they're at from a service perspective. Leak two. And this is kind of like here's comes the rest of the story. So, the second is just really, and somebody had asked a question in chat about payment exceptions, failed payments, retries, chargebacks, recovery timing, expirations, not managing those types of things effectively. Typically, if you're signing a customer for the first time, you're not taking an order in hopes of actually billing them. Although we still have customers that are accepting, if you remember from gosh, I'm going to date myself, but back in the days where you used to have the cards in the magazine and mail in that you wanted a subscription, we still do that for some of our clients and actually have a physical processing, actually a couple processing facilities that take in paper and then bill people later. But a majority of our subscriptions are created online these days or through other mediums that that you have a definite first purchase that you can rely on, unless they actually, come back and want something back after the fact. But when you get into renewals and everything, how much churn did we have? How many retries did we do on the card? What other types of things did we do to try and engage the customer? Maybe even outside of just digitally trying to engage the customer. Did we call? Did we actually put a mail piece out, to let them know that they've not been able to renew for a reason or whatever the case happens to be? So all these types of things, and again, the participants will get, some of this information for themselves, are the types of things that we look at and ask ourselves, frankly, each and every day in terms of how we monitor what goes on.
And I'm sure that the retries and other things have a cost involved. So you have to really do it in a way that's going to get you the payment, but not go broke in the process of doing that.
Very true, Kathy. That's a great point to put to out there. And certain organizations, so we have a number of partners that we use. We have our own business logic that we created ourselves, and then go to a business partner if one of our clients asks us to. The ecosystem of how to effectively try and, I'll say it in this way, wring the most out of a credit card, is very, very broad and very deep these days, but it can
Yeah.
also be very, very confusing. So looking at it from an ROI basis, and a customer sentiment basis, because you can take actions while you're trying to recover, for instance, a credit card that a customer will see on their statement or that they will understand based upon potentially like a direct debit situation or something. So you need to be aware of what you're doing and what it actually does to the consumer, not just getting you the consumer back onto a pay for another month, another quarter, another year.
Great point.
The third leak that we see is really, in terms of service. Often a number of you and or your clients, have seasonal peaks and valleys. It could be massive renewals. It could be using agency orders and then trying to renew all those agency orders. It could be truly seasonal type of things. We have some clients that do massive gift subscription businesses for what I call the littles, kids as a part of their publications. And those go at certain times of the year, back to school, traditional holiday, whatever those cases happen to be. They do a lot of promoting during that time frame. So, and this is where really the friction of volume creates the heat. And ultimately, as you look at what you do within your organization and business partners that you align yourself with, make sure that they can support the volume of what comes through. And that seems like an obvious statement, but we've seen a few of our customers that put a new third party into their ecosystem that they were told, they were shown the numbers, they saw the peak and valley that was taking place, but when it actually came to servicing it and making it happen, it was a far different thing. And ultimately, those types of things, then it costs other charges. It costs brand erosion with your clients, relationship issues, but then it also costs things like credits or refunds or manual work. All those things that just have an unfortunately detrimental impact to the bottom line of your organization, but also the relationship with your customer going forward.
Good points. Very good points.
The next then is really what we say is a part of making things happen as things go kind of awry. So, and I think you have a question for folks.
Yeah, I'm just curious for everybody is how confident are you that you can actually identify recoverable revenue before it becomes churn? So that's ahead of the churn event. Are you noticing customers at risk? And, I'm definitely seeing some questions about retries and other things. And this is the step before that. I'm curious what people are thinking and how your organization is thinking about that. So I'll let everybody kind of answer while we continue to go on, and I'll bring up any really interesting questions as they come up.
Yeah, I mean that you could do a whole webinar just on that one topic alone.
Absolutely, yes.
Good golly, yeah. So the fourth leak, per se, that we really recognize and talk about and kind of bifurcate on in our organization is really the fulfillment and the gaps where a customer isn't receiving what they expected, or even starts then to value the question of what's going on. So fulfillment, unfortunately, as it is today, and you all know this so well, in the States, a lot of our customers still use the postal service for physical print pieces. They use various ESPs for email delivery and link delivery. They rely on the Apple or the Google ecosystem to deliver content over their aggregation methods that they have. Unfortunately, what you see at times is that from a customer service perspective, an agent that's working with individuals, it's really hard in today's day and age for that person to have the information that they need to satisfy a consumer when they come in with something that might not be what they expect. In the UK right now, we have a certain area of London that the Royal Mail is having a terrible delivery time for, and some of the people of this one magazine publication are peeved. And they want us to go and do a bunch of different things, and we try and send it to different places for them. We actually now are with our partner, our client there, are actually having some things white glove delivered to their homes because they find that these people are that valuable to them from an
Wow.
economic perspective. So let's talk about an ROI.
Yeah.
But ultimately, remember that it's not just you and what happens in your four walls. It's also what happens outside of your four walls with other parties that you have aligned yourself with to deliver on your brand promise to the consumer in terms of what's happening. And that is the digital and the physical print spectrum and product spectrum as well. So it's not immune in any channel.
That's such a good point. And this leak number 5 actually ties into some of the answers of our question,
Oh,
which
yeah,
is in terms of identifying issues before somebody churns, the predominant answers, whether it's to everybody or direct, is not confident. So people are not confident that they can understand who is and who is not a churn risk. And
sure.
then I think another point that I see is that payment recovery or churn It's a process across the entire life cycle and creating the first word on this slide, trust. So it's a whole process. So I'll let you
Yeah.
take it from here.
Yeah, I almost feel like one of the I forget what movie it was. I think it was a Mel Brooks movie, where he has like like the commandments for lack of better in terms of all this. And trust, so trust and compliance and regulatory bodies
Mm.
are in all of our businesses in ways that they may not have been a year ago, they may not have been 10, 20 years ago, whatever the case happens to be, but thinking of the policies and the promise that you make to the consumer or the donor or whoever is again the individual that is blessing you with business for your organization, cancellation flows, disputes that a customer may have, refund policies. And even at times the regulatory moments, whether it be things like click to cancel or can spam or handling of EPHI, or some of the things that are coming online in Europe, next year in January. Your organization's ability to both just recognize what your responsibilities are. B, then having the ecosystem by which you can deliver up to those responsibilities. And then really C, you need to, unfortunately, monitor yourself to ensure that you truly are, and then own it when something happens that is not going the direction that you expect. Typically, problems only surface after somebody complains. But if you go back to what we had talked about at the beginning of this, looking at your organization maybe in silos, like we talked about in terms of functional areas of how things happen, and having the measurements and the tools in place can serve as early indicators of frustration or angst or outright non-compliance, and therefore try and get in front of that before your consumers actually end up having it happen to them. So all of these things together, these five areas that we call kind of like the five revenue leaks that we look at, these can be interconnected. They can be in isolation. But most certainly, as we've seen, if something doesn't start well from the beginning, from that moment you take and make that relationship with the consumer and take their order and do what's next, typically bad things don't get better as they roll downhill. I'm just going to use that analogy without using any choice words. And
Right.
a service issue across all these things could quickly become a refund, a cancellation, a complaint to you or a complaint outside of you, even to a third party that may actually come to you later. So when we talk about all these operational leakages, we're really talking about all the connected patterns across this and its compounding effect in terms of what happens, not only to customer satisfaction and retention, but also to just general profitability of running your operation, all of which we're under stress to make better each and every day.
I love this. It's not the data, it's the
It
delta.
is.
I
It
love
truly
that.
is. Yeah. And what we mean by that is that as you have a startup organization, has a certain point in its history, which is nothing to start from, and needs to create the data to then create the heuristics and the understanding and the knowledge. Mature organizations should hopefully have a lot of consumer data, a lot of behavioral data, or at least other factors that you can bring into your own almost like churn or recurring models, but also just listening for the differences. Wow, last week I had three complaints about this magazine publication. It's only Wednesday today, so already this week I've got 300. What is going on? How do you actually pick those things out in terms of trends? And that statement is really true. You need the data, but most importantly, what you need to be listening for is the delta from what you establish as norms and as good practices in terms of what's happening, so that you know when there's fire, not just seeing smoke.
Yep. Yep. Compounding effect. It's real and it's you got to keep an eye on it.
Very much so. All right. So we have a couple of different things that we also like to talk about as we both court and then onboard our clients. The I think the statement here is really very prevalent as well. It goes with the data and the delta statement on the prior slide. It's really reporting usually is historical. Reporting very rarely makes predictions. the control and what you have in place to use the reporting and the data that you have to do what is next is what's really paramount and probably what is the holy grail for us all in running any type of business. So, the signals of trend-based indicators and billing and payments, what happens in fulfillment and trust that you're creating through other mechanisms that you can understand if you have that or not. Clear accountability within an organization for each of the signals that you can end up getting. So an individual that perhaps is a chief revenue officer might be concerned about a number of things, but maybe doesn't they should, but maybe they don't care much about the fulfillment side. They care more about the reoccurring, the revenue, the retention, the renewal, the offer execution and offer promise to execution. I think a CCO or CRO should be involved in all those things, but we have some customers that they have very delineated points where an operations person, basically takes over where that person leaves off and then they worry about the rest of it. I think that's somewhat short-sighted for an organization overall, but ultimately, your teams and understanding from the data that you have and the data that you will curate over time and how to take that into action, and then who's accountable and responsible for listening to those signals and who can basically call the play in terms of what has to happen when something is running askew. All really important things, and we really like that as more of like I think one of us was actually at the airport on a plane, stalled out somewhere, waiting to take off, and we saw the control tower, just like that's the perfect analogy.
I
That
love it.
that
It's a
is the
perfect
perfect.
analogy.
It is the perfect analogy. So
So I'm listening to you, and I'm a very tactical person, and I want to create, leaving this webinar, some my own control tower. What are kind of the top examples that I should put in my own personal control tower for my business when it comes to this?
oh golly, I think ultimately, the control tower for you, well, for any of us, is basically is having that cross. If I go back to that initial slide that had the various ways that you could group your organization, which we see a lot of people doing, it's
Yeah.
having those listening moments that really take into effect what's coming out of each and every one of those parts of the organization, and then you creating or your team creating that you may sit around the table virtually or physically with that cross-functional view in terms of what's really taking place. For us, we have stand-ups in our organization. It's kind of cliche at times, I think, in terms of calling them that anymore, but we still call them that because literally we're standing up and we meet, a couple times a day at the beginning, at the end of the day, and it happens at our operational sites, it happens in our IT team, it happens in our project teams, and we use those to effectively talk about what each individual component is hearing and what the data is showing. And then we started to create dashboards off of that. Our own organization itself, while we are great at execution, we didn't really even have the highest level dashboard in place for us to start to go the traditional red, yellow, green in terms of knowing if we had issues that someone like myself could just walk in any day not attending those stand-ups and knowing what's going on. And those are the types of things that we put in place to just really help that cross-organizational, that cross-departmental view come together in one view to basically say, are we good? Is our customer good? Or are our clients good and their customers, good, all in the same vein?
Hmm. Really great points. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question for everybody, and we would love to see this in the chat for you. Which control element is the weakest in your organization? So can you go back one just so we can read the signals, the ownership, or the playbooks? So really curious about what people think about that. So I'm seeing first one is in ownership. That actually I could see that. I mean, any one of these, depending on what type of business you have. Yeah, I see
Yeah.
another one in terms of signals, playbook. So we're getting everybody here. So we can just keep going. I know as you go through the next few slides, Terry, I'm going to
Yeah,
be pinging you for examples, but
sure.
um, we've got brands that have actually stores with subscriptions and physical goods. We have global media organizations. We have magazines. We have service companies. We've got a wide range of different very large and growing types of recurring revenue companies. So as we go through, I'm really curious, what do you see the leading organizations doing differently that helps them manage these details?
Yeah, that's a great question because this does feel kind of like a boil the ocean minute, doesn't it? Or moment, maybe a minute, given how fast our lives are moving. But I would say first and foremost, organizations treat operational performance as truly a leadership priority, not just a departmental
Mm,
responsibility.
yes.
If this is one of those cases, that if the top leadership of the organization, whether it be a division, whether it be the stores division versus the online versus the others, going back to the initial days of e-commerce when we literally talked in that vein at times, it basically is who in the end, if if your most critical customer were to come and walk into your organization and have the privy to get past your security and be safe as a customer and come to you and just want to basically talk to the one person that actually has a view in leadership, who is that person? Is it all of your leadership team? Is it just someone like me who happens to be privileged to hold the chair for the entire company? Is it somebody 6 levels, quote unquote, down in an organization? Define, from a leadership perspective, that it is important and that it is the responsibility of the company as a whole. And it is something that's just not a little thing that this certain portion of the organization is doing. And folks do it consistently. They connect metrics across the life cycle, as we had said, instead of managing them in those silos. As we had said, they use the data to look for patterns, not just an incident in terms of what takes place. We talked about it just a few seconds ago, ownership. Creating ownership for whom is actually both getting the signal, but also whom is actually accountable or responsible or both to actually go then and fix it in terms of what happens. They review policies with some frequency, or playbooks that they may have in the organization in terms of what ends up happening. And in today's day and age, with AI and things that are going on in the external world that impacts us all, AI for us has been a huge tool to go through and continuously do things like reviewing policies, data, exceptions, all those types of things in a very quick fashion. And they ultimately talk together in ways that we used to all do back before COVID in terms of getting in a room and doing a huddle and talking about things that are happening and what's going on. And I think the most important, they take action. Unfortunately, we do have some clients that have a great deal of data and they're really proud of a dashboard and they're really proud of the things that we give them as a part of their ecosystem in dashboards, but they don't act. They just sit on it. That they're like, oh, this is great. We've got this data, but they don't take an action. And then the same thing keeps happening again and again and again. So my plea to all of us as industry participants is not to wait for the churn or the margin pressure to tell us that something's wrong when it's way too late. You've lost so much already by that point in time. Use these operational signals that we talk about to really identify, as we're saying, the leakage before it becomes a larger financial issue and before it becomes a brand and a customer satisfaction issue.
Such an important point. Leadership and the word you haven't said yet, which is tied to that, empowerment.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Absolutely.
and really that's of all size organizations, whether it's someone that's in startup mode, whether it is a Fortune 10 organization. As the world has gotten more complicated for us all managing, ourselves individually, our employees, now this new technology that we're using in our organizations, the empowerment to be able to, like on the TQM, for quality, quality management, the ability for somebody to pull the cord and stop is still something that you need to make sure is in your organization. Because at times, folks, with the automation and the AI that we're putting into our organizations, how do you stop it if you see something wrong? If it sees itself wrong, how does it stop? We do use some AI in our work. We also use AI to check the AI, oddly enough, in terms of what's going on. And then we have a person that basically checks the check. It
Yep.
sounds ridiculous, but it's a cost of doing business to try and become that much more efficient and that much more margin focused. It doesn't mean that you give up the responsibility to the tools of solving things for you. You still need people involved.
Yes, you need people who know what they're doing and reviewing
Yes.
and evolving.
Yeah.
So I think I got you off track. So let's catch
Oh,
up
that's
with
okay.
where we are. And if anybody has any questions, we are monitoring and we will answer any questions that come up. I think there we go.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so we just really talked about, some of this in terms
Yep.
of things that you can do and what some of the leaders are doing, really, really well. As I'd said, the leadership thing is a big deal. They do things consistently. They connect the metrics across the life cycle. They look for the patterns that take place, not just the single incidents, the ownership that we had talked about as well, the review of the policies and things, and then with tuning things like payment recovery to customer behavior, not just generic one size fits all. We have a client who does an amazing online and offline stores-based business that does some of the same exact metrics across both because they see that the consumer is actually the same for them. They are actually doing something in store and then going online as a part of the journey. It's somebody that does a lot of cooking and a lot of recipes and things from that perspective. So they're tuning, but they're doing different things based upon where the consumer purchased. They had card present in store in terms of what was going on, whether it be chip or whatever the case happens to be. And then they see that consumers actually at times use different cards offline because they have a different type of credit card for offline, or excuse me, for online purchases. I mix those two. You all understand. And they see churn on the online because they're using this one card for purchases across many online merchants versus what they do with the physical card that's in their wallet. Looking at things like that they pick up on through the data again and the understanding of the data, and then utilizing that data on the online world and in the churn world in terms of how they tailor their individual customer experiences in different cohorts. And then also, this whole thing, the aspect of treating fulfillment and the access of what happens to make the magic happen as a part of the customer relationship is so paramount. It's not a necessary evil. Customer service in and of itself is not a cost center. Customer service is a opportunity to have more revenue, to retain revenue, to effectively elevate the consumer experience in ways that you're doing, whether it be through self-help online, whether it be through chatbots and AI, whether it be through a physical person on the phone that somebody interacts with, or even to some of us on visual means now in terms of doing visual calls. Remember that that really helps you get signal and helps you act early, which is what we all were talking about and want to do.
Hmm. Important.
Oh, wow. We're done? No way we're done. We could keep
No
going.
way, no way. I know I have some questions for you, but
Sure.
so how should we think about what we've talked about today from a P&L perspective? If I own subscriptions and I'm reporting to my board and I want to change some things out, they want to know about profit and loss and all that. How do I talk to my board about this and making changes to support what you talked about today?
Yeah, I think it actually comes down to almost a one-liner that maybe we all should write down or we should put as a part of the slides when we send this out. It's profitability becomes much more manageable when you can see where it is eroding and respond before the damage compounds. So and substitute the word profitability, put customer satisfaction, put retention, put brand promise, put any type of word in the point of profitability. And ultimately, that is what I would say is your kind of leading statement to people that you wish to sell an initiative to or a need to go and do this more and be more understanding of your own self so you can service your clients better.
I think that's amazing answer. It's so, so important. I see another question here, which is it's a specific question on the specific of how you define churn.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
but I'm going to expand it a little bit because when you talk about conversion and renewal and churn, different organizations may count things differently based on history, the platforms they're using, their specific business model. But this person, Bill, is asking, is churn counted as when the customer cancels their future billing, disables auto renew, or after their subscription expires? Well, those are three different use cases, actually. And
Really?
I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean those are all valid use cases, and really churn can be picked up from almost day one or day zero with a customer. A customer purchases something or is gifted something and they never engage. Probably a very huge indication of what churn will be with that consumer in terms of what's happening. A lot of our clients, especially those that are taking credit cards or involved in one of the fill in the blank pay ecosystems that exist, they may consider churn because there's some type of a decline, hard or soft, that takes place at renewal, and they may stop. But other customers don't consider that churn until they actually go through and try their retry logic or give it to a third party partner that they might be working with that has other bespoke business logic that they've developed over the years in terms of when it's best to go and try and recycle a card and do other things. So there might be various
Mhm.
mitigating points that for your organization, your churn might be right there because you don't continue on, you don't do something. There is, I think, remember when we all were going through COVID and jobs were so prevalent and everybody could quit and go get another job, and there was the quiet quitting. Quiet quitting of a customer is a big deal as well. The non-engagement or just the not responding to various types of renewals.
Mm.
And or in terms of what happens as well, which is really hard. One of our non-for-profits who acts like a retailer has a lot of email transition within its client base. People that use work emails because they're buying gifts or things that they wish to do things with, or they're using a Benevity platform and they need the corporate email to do the donation, but then they do a donation from home and all of a sudden they're identified multiple ways. And one of them stops donating that email, but it's actually the same person. So is that churn? Or is
Is
that
that
not churn in terms of what's going on? The data would suggest on itself it's churn, but the data with intuition and knowledge based upon what the data actually means could give you a far different view of what your world is. So just some really interesting examples that we see.
really good examples? This question by William, it also brings up another issue of voluntary versus involuntary.
Hmm.
There's very, very different tactics because the root cause of that churn is different. Do you recommend people measure it differently and approach those different types of churn in different ways?
I do, and I think you could even sub-segment voluntary in a couple of different ways. So voluntary could mean from a publisher perspective, I basically am going to force people to stop because I'm going to raise price so much because they are pain in the butt folks. One of our folks actually has a part of their view of the customer as to how high maintenance they are. Are they a complaining customer no matter what is going on? And ultimately, they will jack price to ultimately price the customer out of their ecosystem. Does that mean that they actually churned? Was it a bad thing? In this case, it was a good thing. Then there's other voluntary churn, which could be a customer just being done or a customer dying and not being available to purchase anymore and things that's going on. Or you could go voluntary, which also could be involuntary in terms of things as simple as the payment method not being used and them coming back in because they want to effectively use a different payment method, but your ecosystem is complicated and it doesn't support it in the way in which you think. Or you have the customer that we see in a lot of our publications that does the paywalling, trying to beat the paywall. So they use different
Yep.
types of emails, or Gmail is unfortunately really helpful to trowinski@gmail.com, t.rowinski@gmail.com, tr.rowinski@gmail.com are all different customers all of a sudden. They're the same person. Was it really churn or was the person just trying to game the system in terms of what's going on? So you have to really get together with your team and talk through those, what if and those use case scenarios so that you can get for your organization what that number really is. And then above all, use that with other data to really understand both your revenue and your margin implication, but also your customer and your brand satisfaction.
Really, really good points. I know we're getting towards the top of the hour and I want to be mindful of everybody's time.
Yeah,
There's a couple of questions that I see that are very specific. So what
sure.
I'm going to suggest is that we follow up with you after the webinar on the specific questions that that I'm seeing come through. Because sometimes what's good for one company might be bad for another company. So I think what we'll do is follow up individually with those, and I'll ask the team to do that. Um, so I guess I have maybe one, two, or three questions. I guess one is if you had one thing that you wanted everybody to leave with today, what would that be? One point.
Oh gosh.
I know it's hard. I know it's hard because we've
Yeah,
been talking about a
yeah.
lot.
And besides, Terry's a nice guy and stuff. No, I guess really the main takeaway is that the profitability and of the subscription space or the industry that you're in is not protected by your strategy alone. It's got to get to tactics and it's got to get to operational control. All these things matter. Growth matters, brand matters, retention matters, pricing matters, customer engagement and satisfaction matters. And really, I think to back to this card, good isn't good enough. We all need to get better than good in terms of what we're doing because anybody can be good in the industry that we're in. It's those that actually make that transference to greatness that end up having the growth, given all the things that are headwinds against us.
And there's a lot of headwinds
There
on a
are.
lot of different dimensions that we could spend another whole hour on.
Yeah.
But I'm going to leave before we close. For everybody today, what's the next thing they should do? What should they do next in their organizations to help with operational gaps? Besides calling you, I know that that will be an answer, but what do you suggest? Should they, look at the information and diagnose it?
Yeah, from my perspective, start that activity, start that mapping that we talked about, and do it from the standpoint of where can I get signals of stress or duress that actually mean something in my organization. And then once you have the signals, then go to the ownership and then go to the playbooks as to how you start to counter those things that you're seeing in terms of signals and clear ownership. And as you had said, empowerment of people to fix stuff or to bring things up so that you aren't blindsided because all of a sudden you look back at the last quarter and you had massive erosion in one way or another of your organization that you could have caught oh so much earlier in terms of what's going on. That's really moving from reporting, historical reporting to control. And that's kind of my plea of everybody. Do that. If we can figure that out as an industry, we can battle a bunch of things that are our headwinds in terms of what's going on.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. So, Terry, thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise today. I really, really appreciate it. And for everybody joining us today, we know an hour is a lot of time to dedicate towards learning towards subscription operations, but it is the heart of all of our businesses. So I, for one, think it's exceptionally important for all of us to really have a good understanding of that.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Any final words, Terry?
Golly, folks, thank you. We are all in this together. I know some of us may consider each other competitors. We're blessed to manage and help over 100 brands together. They're all going after consumer interests in different areas, and we're all facing a lot of the same headwinds and same problems. We can actually resurrect the media publishing industry and others that are adjacent to us if we all just really work hard together. And we think that this is one practical way to at least solve part of the problem. So let's go and make it happen.
Absolutely. I love that. Good, good, good sentiment to head off into our afternoon. So with that, everybody, thank you, and we will see you next time. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, team.